Syed Hadi is currently a UK-based lecturer, Islamic researcher and religious community counsellor. He left his degree in politics at London University in 2009 to study the religious seminary and Al Mustafa International University in Qom in Iran. Since his return from the seminary 8 years later in 2017, he has been lecturing at the Hawza Ilmiya of England, presenting and participating in workshops in the UK universities, academic institutions, and pursuing his personal study interests in social sciences. He occasionally shares his thoughts, memories, inspirations, and embarrassing attempts to translate Eastern poetry on the site www.epistmes.com. Salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. In the name of God, the all benevolent, all merciful, praise and glory be to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, creator of all things, master of the day of judgment. Salutations be upon his messenger and righteous servant, the seal of the prophets, Muhammad al-Mustafa, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And salutations and peace be upon his blessed household and his progeny. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, ينبأ الإنسان يومئذ بما قدم وأخر. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد. I have to apologize first and foremostly because I've been quite sick for a few days, and this is not how I usually sound. I lost my voice last night almost, so please bear with me. The verse we recited, that day man will be informed about what he has sent ahead and what he has left behind. The desire to leave a legacy, to leave a mark, to be remembered after one's death is something that's been with man for as long as we know. For as long as man has been, there's been a desire to leave a part of him, something about him, for those after him to know about. We see in the Quran that, and this desire to always be remembered or to always be alive or exist, we see it even within the prophets. The Quran, when it's speaking about the story of the Prophet Adam, it says, and when it speaks about how Satan tempted him, it says, the Satan tempted him. He said, "O Adam, shall I show you the tree of immortality and an imperishable kingdom?" Adam was tempted at the very beginning by the idea of immortality. That's how Satan came towards Adam. Elsewhere, the Prophet Abraham is quoted to have prayed. He prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, "Confer me a worthy repute among the posterity. وَجَعَلْ لِي لِسَانَ صِدْقٍ فِي الْآخِرِينَ." Let people remember me well. This is one of the understandings of this verse. So this desire to leave a legacy, to be remembered, has been there. We see it even in the prophets. The prophets asking that there be a legacy that people remember them by. And where does this come from? Scholars mention that this desire comes from love of the self. This love to keep existing, this hubbul baqa, this love and desire for people to remember us after we've gone, for us to keep existing or even not to be gone. In fact, the idea is not to be gone. It comes from our love of ourselves, hubbul dhat. Because we love ourselves, we want to continue existing, continue living. If it's not possible to continue living physically, then we'd like our memory to continue existing. We'd like for our memories to be remembered. Please recite salawat. So currently we can't stay alive physically in this world forever. At least not yet. Let's see what happens with the AI revolution. But as things stand, everyone passes away. One of the arguments that Muslim theologians use for the hereafter is that if a wise God created this desire for eternity within human beings, then there must be an eternal place for these humans to turn to go to after this world. Otherwise, that desire would have been created in vain. And for that we have the hereafter. So that's one way, for those who believe in the hereafter, that's one way to keep their memory alive, to keep their legacy alive, to keep existing after passing from this physical world. To do something to set their life up in a way that in the future, in the hereafter, they have a place which they have a desirable status in the eyes of God and a desirable status in heaven, and where they can continue existing in happiness and in contentment. However, to get to heaven and to make the maximum benefit in heaven or from heaven, work has to be done in this world. The grounds have to be laid here, the seeds have to be sowed in this world. And we can sow seeds that give us a reward. We take that reward and this is now our reward in heaven. Or we can do actions that constantly keep giving rewards. So sometimes you do an action and you get a reward for it. Sometimes you do an action, you take part in an action, and through that action you're constantly getting rewards. I want to focus on this word. So the idea of even existing and of benefiting in the hereafter of this eternal life is very much linked and tied down to how we live our life in this world. Right? So how we make our legacy in this world. Please recite salawat. So when we think about this world, and those who don't believe in the hereafter, they'll try and live in this world through the memory of others, because they know they can't live forever. They may try to cure, for example, illnesses and even death, but as long as that does not happen, they'll try and live. They'll do things that they will be remembered by. They'll try and do actions, get involved in something that after they leave, people remember them by that. But when we become entirely, what happens is, and this is for people that think about it when they focus upon themselves and they'll see this, but what happens is with the way that the world is, we're constantly surrounded and engulfed by just even trying to now, in this day and age at least, just trying to stay alive, to keep have an earning, right? So we're so engulfed by the thoughts of this world, worldly thoughts, that we don't have time to think about these things. We don't have time to think about eternity, the hereafter, let alone staying alive in this world. We end up living a life which is very insular. It benefits mostly ourselves at most, those closest around us, maybe your family. And even then, how does it benefit them? Maybe through some of the efforts we may make in raising our children and trying to train our children, and some of the money we might leave behind for them. But the way that life is, if you do not stop, if we do not make an effort ourselves, a conscious effort, we'll find that we do not even have time, or we do not even make time or spend time to think about this idea of our hereafter, about our legacy, how to keep living after we have passed. Please recite salawat. And this is true not only for work and the other families and other things that keep us busy in life, but also within religion itself. With religion itself, sometimes we busy ourselves with rituals so much that we don't have time to think about the essence. For example, Layali al-Qadr, the nights of Qadr. When a companion would go to the Imam and ask for something to recite on Laylatul Qadr, how would the Imams usually respond? At most, they'd give them one supplication. They tell them, here's a supplication, recite. Have you seen any narrations where the Imam says, my father said to recite this narration, my grandfather said to recite this, his father said to recite this, and I'm telling you to recite this? Those existed. Someone came to, for example, Imam Reza, he gave them something. Someone came to Imam Sadiq, he gave them something else. But did the Imams recount all of the supplications given that the various Imams gave to different individuals and figures? We don't see that. But now what we have is we have many supplications collected in one place. And then people try to read all of those supplications. right? So they lose the forest for the trees. Sometimes we lose the tree for the forest, and sometimes we lose the forest for the trees. So they get caught up in the rituals, and they don't have time to sit down, think, contemplate, and actually supplicate even. Because if you're just speaking in Arabic and there's no intention there, or if you're not understanding what you're saying, are you even supplicating? Are you even asking for something? You're reading, but are you doing the act of supplication? So sometimes even our rituals, the things that we get caught up in, the things that we start to believe are the most important parts of our religions, they can sometimes stop us from actually doing something which can have a long-term benefit and allow us to leave long-term legacies. Please recite salawat. So as social beings, we often find ourselves wanting to leave this impact. Not only we want to leave this impact in other people as well. You don't want to come live in this world. When we think about it, when people, they usually have a crisis at this point. What am I doing with my life? What's my life worth? What have I done so far? If I go tomorrow, if I'm no longer here, will there be any difference in the world? Will I be missed? Will I have done anything for anyone else but myself? And interestingly, the Quran actually uses this idea that people have a desire to be remembered. We see in a few places the Quran, it speaks to the people and it reminds them, look, at the previous nations, at the previous civilizations, they're no longer here. If you want to tread their path, then, like them, one day you'll no longer be remembered. There'll be no trace of you anymore. So it uses this idea that previous civilizations that tried to transgress against God have no more mention, have no more existence. In fact, some of them, had the Quran not mentioned them, we may not have known about them. Had our books not mentioned about them, we may have had no sources referring to those civilizations. In one place we see the Quran, after speaking about a group of people that that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has replaced, it says, فَمَا بَكَّتْ عَلَيْهِمَ السَّمَاءُ وَالْأَرْضُ وَمَا كَانُوا مُنْذَرِينَ. That they're gone. But the earth and the heavens and the earth do not cry over them. Scholars take this to mean that that whole civilization, not one individual, that whole nation, them no longer existing in this earth means nothing to the earth. The earth doesn't miss them. Ma bakkat, it doesn't matter. They lived a life in such a way that had no impact on the rest of the world, no positive impact at least. It's reminding, and we see these reminders subtly there, that think about leaving a legacy. Think about making an impact. Think about making that change. And how so? Can it be used for good deeds for ourselves? We mentioned, you can do good deeds, you can pray, but that's a personal ibadah if you're praying at home. You can fast, but that benefits you, right? That's something you're doing for yourself. But then if you go, will the earth miss you? It might miss someone, a worshipper of God, but will anything happen to the earth if you no longer exist? If you cease to be? What is your role? What is your contribution to this world? To do something that will make this world miss you. That means doing things for other people. That means thinking about others, whether that's other believers or that's other humans, everyone. So there has to be a focus on social deeds. It's not enough for us to focus only on our personal deeds. And this is interesting because Shahr Ramadan, so many of the du'as that we have for Shahr Ramadan, wa alaykum as-salam wa rahmah, their focus is, there's a lot of focus in them. I won't say the entire focus is. There's a lot of focus in these du'as on the community, their communal prayers. You pray for others. Sometimes in the prayer of Subh, in the morning prayer, you're by yourself, you're at home. But when you do the du'a, you're praying, you're using the pronouns that include other believers. There's no one there, you're by yourself, but you're being reminded even at those times to pray for who? To remember to pray for others. So it's a great shame that we use this month, or we don't allow this month to change us into people that want to make that change, and that social change. Not just that change within ourselves. We say, how do I become a better person in Shahr Ramadan? You may not become a better person by fasting or increasing. This is important, reciting your Quran, but is that what makes you a better person? Right. With everything that's going on around us, around the world, all the suffering, just in the beginning of Shahr Ramadan. Up until now, every day, people dying towards the east, people being oppressed in the far east. Over here, ourselves, the troubles that we will face, we can face. What are we doing to contribute to a good that's greater than just our own personal good, and that will transcend our time, and that will be of benefit to other people? We have this idea of thawab jari, a good act that continues, that keeps existing after you've passed. And the famous story we've all heard of Salman planting the tree, the date tree. Someone came to him and told him that, why do you plant this tree? You will not see its fruits. And he said, I benefited from the fruits of those trees that were planted before me. So thinking about, and one of the historic deeds that we can think about contributing to. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to say that, okay, we cannot suffice on our own personal deeds or personal worship. We want to do something greater than that. We want to contribute to a historic good deed. The scholars, they speak about historic good deeds that transcend one's own time. So you do a good deed now, it benefits you. Sometimes you do a deed that generations down the line, people are still benefiting from it. The tree is one example. Building an institution, an hospital, right? Starting a movement, creating a particular culture. All of this can have long-term impact, and this becomes a historic good deed. The more people that keep getting involved, the more people it helps. You are benefiting where? Even after you have left. Please start salawat. So just to look at one historic deed that we can focus on in this month, and we've already alluded to it, mentioned it. It's something that we speak about and we read in almost after every prayer in this holy month. If we're reading those du'as that are recommended, we say, Allahumma ghayr suwa halina bi husni halik. Oh Allah, change our evil state into a good state through your excellent state. This is a du'a, but will it happen with just us doing the du'a? Will that happen? Will the change happen? Quran says that God will not change the state of a nation unless they change themselves. So you're praying here, but you have to remember, you have to turn back to the Quran and remember that this change will not just come through with you praying. You can pray after every prayer in Shahr Ramadan and after every prayer in the year. The Quran is telling you the change will come when? Once you start making that change within yourself. So one of the historic deeds that we can contribute to in this month is helping ourselves collectively come out of the sad state that we find ourselves, the Muslim world. To bring ourselves out of this sad state, our own community, problems we're facing, problems that we should have foreseen and dealt with decades ago, and now because we had left them, they're at our doorsteps, threatening us and our children. If we don't do anything, and if we think we can save ourselves and our children, fine, we might have saved them. But in this case, we've not contributed towards that historic good deed. In fact, we might have contributed towards making the situation worse for how we're accountable. If we could have done anything, if we could have stopped it, if we could have slowed it down, and we did nothing, then there's also the idea of the historic bad deed, contributing to historical bad deeds. It's not only the person that starts the deed that is contributing to it. Any person that allows that deed to get stronger is part of it. They play a role in it. It's something we have to think about when we say Allahumma asli kulla fasidin min umur al-muslimin. This being said, we see in the life of Lady Khadija. Lady Khadija is someone who, it's not an exaggeration to say that she is one of the individuals in Islam, one of the greatest individuals in Islam in terms of leaving a legacy that we benefit from today. We may not focus on it as much, but the success of the Prophet's mission, part of it how we understand, is tied to the sacrifices and contributions of Lady Khadija. She did what she could at that time. She had wealth, however she got it. She used that wealth and she gave it in the path of the Prophet. That giving of wealth and living those few years in difficulty, at least apparent difficulty, for her meant that for a millennia after, for centuries after, people could benefit from the religion of Islam. She gave from her wealth, she gave from what she had, and because of that sacrifice, because of her getting involved in that historic good deed, centuries later, we're still benefiting from that deed of hers. Please recite salawat. And she contributed to this. She has a massive role to play in the success of the Prophet, in the success of Islam. Not only through her money, she joined the Prophet when there was no one there, the moral support. She was there when everyone had turned against him. She came from nobility. She came from a very well-known family, and then all of a sudden, she's part of a family now sanctioned. A family being chased away from the city in which she had a reputation for being an outstanding woman, a place where we don't have much information about other females having achieved what she achieved. But she gave all of that up to contribute to this particular cause, and that we're benefiting to now. So what I'd like to take away, there's other things I want to mention, but I want to end on time. I have 1 minute left. I want us to take away that when we leave here, when we leave this month even, what is the historic good deed that we're going to contribute to? If us gathering here together, or if us having the facilities that we have at our hands and having access to all of the tools that we do, if we are not able to use that to improve the situation of our brothers and sisters around the world, our co-religionists, then are we really doing good deeds? And that's an important, I don't want to go, are we really doing a good deed? Is it a good deed for me to, for example, not swear or fast or pray? Right? And that is, you have to, it's wajib, you can't not do that. Or read an extra few verses of Quran, but then not pay attention to all of these other important issues, not pay importance to the soul and the spirit of the message of the Quran. وآخرة دعوانا ولله الحمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Sorry, I was told to leave a few minutes for...
We have some time for questions, if there are any questions from the gents or the lady side.
Should we call it a day?
So can I ask a question myself? Is that okay? So we're obviously taught to recite Quran a lot and to recite supplications. How do we balance the idea of helping our own soul as well as helping others as well?
First of all, we realize that those aren't two separate things. That ultimately you cannot help yourself unless you're also helping others. Part of helping yourself is helping others. We have places in the Quran, for example, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu isbiru was-sabiru. It says be patient and then sabiru. Help one another in patience. It's not enough for you to be patient by yourself. To act upon this verse, you have to be patient and wasabiru, and help one another. Help others in patience. Warabitu. Help one another in, and there's different translations for what rabatu is or understandings, but help one another be wary, protect one another. Rabitu was usually, the rabits were the people that were taking care of the boundaries of Islam, the borders. But there's other definitions for rabitu. So I think part of it, I mean, you definitely have, there has to be an element of self there. You do. Shahr Ramadan is one of those nights. But it can't and shouldn't completely be dedicated to the self. There has to be an element of helping others. When the Quran says, "I'tasamu bihablillahi jami'an," i'tasamu, for those who know Arabic, that subject of i'tasamu, that waw at the end, it's plural. It says all of you. I'tasamu bihablillah means all of you hold on to the rope of Allah. This sentence is complete. According to the Arabic language, this sentence is complete. Nothing else needs to be added on. It means all of you hold on to the rope of Allah. But then it's added jami'an, collectively, together. It's not enough for all of you to just hold on. Hold on together, jami'an. So that collective act, not separating our own success or our own self-building from the state of our society, from the state of others. So I've been thinking about this a few days because it's important. You do need that time for yourself. And Shahr Ramadan is just one of those days that one of those months that we actually do get time to focus on ourselves. But just to try and find a balance, make sure, okay, read some Quran, read some ayat, but then make sure you also are making a plan to think about others. What are you doing? Maybe you can find a friend who may have become distant from the path, or maybe going through difficulty, and say, this Shahr Ramadan, I'm going to help that individual in whatever way. If I can help them, for example, someone's having financial difficulty. If I can help them find a job, I'm going to help them. And Shahr Ramadan, I'm going to take time out, 20 minutes a day, 30 minutes. I'm going to sit down with them. I'm going to help them with their CV, and I'm going to help them search for jobs. Now, I'm not in a position to say this, but I find it highly unlikely that this act itself would be seen as less valuable than some of the other acts that we do in Shahr Ramadan, this act of trying to help another individual. Something like that which we might not even think is important, or something which brings a great amount of reward. We'd be surprised. But yeah, I don't have a percentage that you have to spend this much time on yourself and this on other people.
Any final burning question? I think we're on there. Muhammad wa ala Muhammad salawat.
Allahumma salli ala.